In this demonstration, we're going to talk about the scheduled reports that allow you to send out any of that form response data, your employee data, training data, equipment data, or any of that open task data that you want to send out. It will send you a report on whatever frequency you set up. So whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly, it allows you to systematically schedule those out without having to manually go into the site to pull that data. So we're going to actually go into the control panel here. Sometimes it is housed on the right-hand side under the extras heading, but mine is actually at the bottom here under extras, and it is called the scheduled reports feature here. So you'll just click into scheduled reports. Actually, whenever you first come in, it will have the blue button here, but after you add some scheduled reports, you're actually going to want to click this plus add button right under your name so that you can add your new reports from there, because that blue button will go away once you add one. So we're going to go ahead and click add here, and I'm actually going to show you how to set up 3 different types. So I'm going to set up one for pulling form responses. I'm going to set up one for pulling the training data, and then one for pulling equipment. So here you'll just describe what the report is basically doing so that it reminds you. It's really an internal title, not the title of the email, just an internal title to tell you what that report is doing. So in this case, I am going to pull form responses for my 360 inspection. And actually, I'm going to call it the weekly because I want this to trigger on a weekly basis. The creator is automatically tagged to me. And then if it's enabled, that means it's running. You can have it disabled in the background until you're ready for it to start running and then come in and check this box. What shared means is if you have other admins in your site, you can have them be able to edit your scheduled report as well if you wanted to share that with them as well. Otherwise, we allow admins to have their own scheduled reports that nobody else needs to touch, and then they can have their own reports running that go to them. So here we'll set the trigger, and that's going to be the how often you want it to run. So whether that's daily, weekly, monthly. Also, there's little fun things with the weekly option where you can kind of make it daily, but just choose the days of the week that you wanted it to run, such as every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Maybe you want to receive that report. You can choose those options. If you're doing a monthly report and you want it to run on the 1st of the month, every month, you would actually choose your starting date as the 1st of the month here. So you would just choose this back to the 1st of the month, and it actually knows that, we already passed May 1st. So the next run would be on June 1st at 2022 at 10 a.m. If I wanted to adjust that time, you just adjust the time frame that you wanted to run it. So if I wanted it at 7 a.m. sitting in my inbox before I even get into work, I can do that as well, and then have that monthly. In this case, I do want to run a weekly responses. And in this case, I actually want to run a true full week of the last 7 days of responses. And I'm going to start with Sunday. And I'll kind of explain this in just a moment once we pop into the form responses and pulling that data. Because the way that pulls is it pulls from the last 7 days, and it actually runs on the actual date that you run it. So if I wanted it to run on Sundays, I would just choose that as Sunday. And you can see, again, it automatically calculates that the next run would be Sunday, May 22nd. So once I have my parameter set for how often I want it to go, just click done. And then now we're going to add our data. So we have lots of different options to pull those data sets from the site. So in this case, I am going to show you the form responses. And this is actually going to pull from the form responses. And here I'm just going to choose the form that I'm wanting it to pull from. And then I did want to kind of point out, the last 7 days again. This is why I have it running on a Sunday, so that it can actually pull the last true 7 days from the date that it's running. So now it will run from Sunday to Sunday, pulling that data. There is options within the form if you only wanted to see certain items within your form set. You can choose different things to only show different fields. So if you were like, well, I really don't want to see anything other than maybe the equipment number and mileage and hours, you can pick those 3 columns. And then every time that the report runs, it would only include those 3 on the report. So we do allow you to have it run all the data, which would be that default option, or pick and choose the columns that you want to kind of show on that report from there. So that's pretty handy as well. Also, under the advanced search is kind of where you're going to find all your form fields. If you wanted to search by a certain location, if you had that in your form, you can filter it down here and then create a scheduled report for each location separately. I've seen that done as well. So here they could kind of filter up their data and then it would apply to their scheduled report every time. So now I actually don't want to kind of filter anything up. I just want to see the last 7 days of the inspections, and I'm going to click done here. The last part here is to add that notification to send to you. So here we're going to send that notification. Typically you can send by job titles and locations and things like that, but typically you're going to use the individual filter to send this to the person or persons that you want. So if I did want to send it to multiple, I can choose myself and Derek Brown here, and then now you can see it selects the individuals and shows down here that it's going to send to 2 employees. The next part is actually typing out that email. So here the weekly 360 inspection report, and then I typically copy the body the same and just say something like attached is the. And then lastly, the scheduled reports will allow you to just send out an email reminder as well, so you can utilize that if you ever needed to with no data attached. If you ever send the scheduled report and it doesn't have attachments on it, then that means that you forgot to attach the attachments of the reports that you want to receive. So there are some reporting options here, and I kind of want to point out where these pull from so that you know what data you're pulling. So I am going to pop over to the forms responses for this and show you what data sets these pull from. So the columns report, stacked report, spreadsheet, I kind of want to point these out, individual, trend, map, and observer, and then all the groupings of anything that was marked satisfactory, a graph for anything that was marked unsatisfactory, and then NA options and so forth. So where these pull from is actually in your form responses here, and you would go into the form responses page. And then as you can see, all those same filters that I showed before are actually exactly the same up here. If I hide this advanced search, the first 3 reports are actually on the white drop-down arrow for scheduled report, or sorry, excuse me. On the white drop-down arrow, you get the first 3 reports for spreadsheet, the PDF columns, and the PDF stacked report. Then after that, those individual responses, the trend, map, and observer, and then those groupings of what has been selected as SAT versus unsat, and NA, and so forth. So this is kind of where those graphs are pulling from. You can download them manually in PDF at any time by popping into your form responses, but this is actually where that data set is pulling from, so you know what attachments you want to attach. In this case, I'm going to say I want a spreadsheet, and then maybe I also only want to see the unsatisfactory items that have been completed. That will give me a good graphing set in the last 7 days of what items have been selected the most as unsat, and then I can kind of analyze the data from there. So now I'll just click done. And now once you have all 3 items set here, and if you do need to go back in and edit, you can go back in and edit the parameters at any time by clicking the pen and paper here, and it would pop it back open for you to make any edits. But what I like to normally do is do a save and send to me. and then I can just type in my email address here and receive a copy of the scheduled report immediately so that I know what it looks like when it sends. Otherwise, if you don't want to kind of see what it's going to look like and just wait for it to send, you can just go ahead and click Save. And then now you have your scheduled report enabled and ready to go. Another thing I want to point out is once you have it created, you can go ahead and clone it. It does have to be saved first, and then you get this option to clone it. So if you had a scheduled report that you were going and you wanted to filter out like each location, you can save and clone and just change that filter for location and then reset it up to the people it needs to go to accordingly, and then it would automatically go. Unfortunately, you would have to set one up for each location if you wanted them separated out, but that is an easier feature by using the save and clone versus creating each one individually. So that's the form responses. The other one I wanted to point out is how to kind of pull an equipment status showing the expired. Very similar here, as all the filters on your equipment page here is going to look exactly the same when we create that scheduled report. So I'll run through this one a little bit faster. So this one's going to be the equipment status report. And same thing, I'm just going to do enabled only, and then I'm going to do my 3 items here. So I'm going to set how often I want it to run. In this case, I'm just going to set it to daily option. I'm going to say I want it to run every day at 8 a.m. And then I'm going to add my data here. And this time I'm going to choose my equipment report. And then same as the fields for the, for the form responses, you can choose certain items to show so that you don't have to see all the data in one area. You can just choose, hey, I want to see the serial number and maybe their location. You can pick certain items you want to see on that report here. Otherwise, all the data will kind of populate on the response. If you're only wanting to see a certain type, you can filter here, or if you wanted to see if it's in service or out of service, you can filter that to out of service if you only wanted to see your out of service equipment. If you wanted to see the overall status is only expired or expiring, you can filter to those 2, and then we can create that equipment report from there. So I'm just going to say I don't want to really see any equipment that's active, just the ones that are expired and expiring. And I'll click done here. So the equipment status report is a little bit easier to set up here. And then lastly, just setting up that notification again. So here I'll choose the people it needs to go to, choose the email option, and this is again the equipment status report. And then lastly, I get an option for PDF or Excel, which is the CSV format. So you could do both as well if you need to. Just as a note, if you choose multiple attachments, it will only allow you to do 5 at a time, and then you would need to set up a scheduled report for any additionals that you need from there. And then you just click done and then save, and that's it for that one. The last one I'm going to show here is a training status report. I did want to point out where this data pulls from. So again, typical filters from your training status report, but the reports that you're going to be able to select from will be the trainings report, which gives you an overall breakdown of each training by status here. And then the employee report, which gives a breakdown of the deficiencies on their profile, and which ones they have complete, a percentage of completion, and then a complete, even deeper dive of employees per training, where it gives all the last completed dates, what they're active in, what they're incomplete in per topic, and then lastly, just straight completions. So these are kind of the 4 reports that you'll be running. And I just wanted to point these out so you know where this data set is coming from so that you know what data you're pulling. So now I'm going to set up a scheduled report to pull that data. So here, again, very similar, we're going to do training status report. And then we're going to set the trigger. This one I'm going to just say I want to see a monthly status. And again, I want it to go on the 1st of every month. So I'm going to pop this back to the 1st. And then that way it just runs at the 1st of every month. I'm going to change this one to go at 8 a.m. as well. That way it's just running early in the morning. Next, I'm going to add my data set. So here it is going to be that training report. And then if you wanted to only filter to certain statuses such as expiring and incomplete, you can do that here as well so that you don't have to see the active if you have a lot of employees. Sometimes limiting that list can be helpful. So this is where you would apply those filters here, and then that would pull that report automatically. Of course, you can filter by a certain topic as well, or topics if you need to, certain job titles and things like that as well. And then lastly, you're going to see here is where you're going to choose that report style. I actually just want to see it overall per employee. And then I do also want to point out the columns here because this will allow you to choose additional data on screen. So it does show the number of deficiencies, but not the names. So I am going to pop up what incomplete, trainings they have as well by selecting the deficiency names there as well. So then I have my data set added and I'm going to click done. And then the last part is again to just add that notification of an email, send it to the individuals who need to receive that report, copy and paste a subject and email body, and then also attach a copy. We also do have a training matrix report that will spit out in a normal fashion that people are used to in Excel with all the, colors of green and red and orange if they're expiring. So feel free to utilize that one to spit out on a monthly basis as well. Otherwise, if I just wanted certain data sets, you can do the PDF, CSV Excel, or even the matrix as well, and it'll allow me to attach all three and send those to me in email systematically on that monthly basis on the 1st of the month. So that is pretty much it for the scheduled reports. Feel free to reach out to our support email. If I can talk, okay. So that is it for scheduled reports. Please feel free to reach out to our support email at support@kpaehs.com.